All right, you guys, welcome in tonight. We are so glad you're here and joining us. And we have obviously a very special guest with us tonight, a Los Angeles Film School alum from the Entertainment Business Program, Chase Thomas, who is the owner, operator of the Carmine Theatrical Entertainment Group, which is a group of Broadway investors located here in Southern California who invest in Broadway shows. And he is a producer of Broadway shows, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But glad you're here. And Chase, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm super excited. I'm like, yay! A lot of Zooms.
Yeah. Awesome. Something to do during the shutdown here. So are you here local? Are you in Los Angeles tonight?
I am in county. So I grew up in Laguna Beach.
Oh, okay.
And then obviously, traveling to and from LA.
Yeah, for sure.
Part of the whole deal here in Orange County.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to pop that out there so we can see a little bit better. So we're just going to jump right into it. Chase, I'm going to ask you a few questions and just kind of jump around here with our discussion. And then when we're finished kind of going through the notes that I have here, the questions that I have, then we'll open it up to our students and have them grill you.
Yes. Hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Bring it on.
All right. Well, want to just start off and just have you tell us about your journey, especially relating to the Los Angeles Film School. What brought you to the film school? When did you graduate? Tell us about you.
Yeah. So my story is kind of weird. So I started off as a performer. I went to the Orange County School of the Arts, which is in Santa Ana, and I was like, I'm going to be a Broadway performer. I love to perform. That's all I want to do. Perform. Cool. So throughout high school, all I did was basically perform. And so when I was a senior, my school was like, hey, Chase, we want you to go to Pace University. You're going to go to this school. Then you're going to get a career in Broadway as a performer. And I'm like, okay, cool. So let's do it. And so I moved to New York, went to the New York Film Academy for musical theater. And then while I was there, I got an agent and manager. And so my agent and manager said, hey, we recommend that you drop out of school. And being an 18-year-old, when you hear that, you're like, okay. So I decided to drop out of school to audition. And so, as we all know, it takes 1,000 auditions to book one. And so while I was auditioning, I kept getting no's. And after a while, I was like, shoot, what am I going to do? I can't live a life of just a whole bunch of no's, especially with no income. And so I worked at Radio City Music Hall as a usher. And that's when I realized, what am I doing? I can't afford to live, A, in New York City with minimum wage. B, I know I have so much more potential in me to work a minimum wage job and then try to make it as a performer. So I had an epiphany where I was like, you know what, Chase? I want longevity in this career because I love entertainment, period. And I need to figure out how can I stay in this business as long as possible. And so I said to myself, hey, look, you're going to have to drop your ego. Would you ever consider doing behind the scenes entertainment business? And I was like, oh, okay. And I reached out and looked at the LA Film School and was like, wait, there's an actual program to learn entertainment business. I just love producing. I want to be the guy who is in charge, basically, instead of being, the little toy, the talent that they play with. I want to be the guy that's in charge, but how do I do it? And so I did say to myself, okay, are we going to go back to school? And lo and behold, I packed my bags, moved from New York back home, which is embarrassing at first because everyone's like, oh, you failed. You didn't do it right. You get all the negativity. But in my head, I knew what I wanted. And I said, my end goal is to be a producer. I don't know how. I don't know how I'm going to start, but my first goal is to just go back to school and learn the basic fundamentals. I've learned about performing my whole life. Let's learn something new. And so I went back to school online, which at first everyone's like, why are you going back to school online? It's so hard. You're not going to learn anything, X, Y, and Z, excuses under the sun. And I'm like, I need to go to school online because I work at a much faster pace. And I realized that with school, in high school, and even in college, I need to work in my own time. And so basically, I went back to school. While I was in school, I got an internship at Warner Brothers under Andrew Lazar. So he's the producer on American Sniper, 10 Things I Hate About You, a lot of big movies. And so I applied for the internship at Warner Brothers, and I got it. And I was the youngest producer intern at the time at Warner Brothers for him. And so I was just a freshman in college. I was like about 19 at the time, and I applied, got the internship. I was sitting at a table with a whole bunch of NYU, USC seniors. And I'm like, oh crap. How am I going to stand out against all of these other people? And as you know, it's highly competitive, and everyone's going on and on and on about what school they went to, who they know. And so I'm like, what can I do to make myself known? And again, it's just being personable. And I talked to Andrew. I said, hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything? I talked to the assistants. I was just very personable. And throughout my course there at Warner Brothers, they just fell in love with me because of my personality and energy. It wasn't that, you know, I went to USC or Chapman. It's because I was just a genuinely good person. But also I did my job on time and I did it well. And so I was able to then be, you know, the favorite intern. Because when you do internships, there's always that one intern that they just love. And so I happened to be that. But again, it wasn't me being malicious at all. I just was genuine and personable and said, hey, look, I'm here to learn. I understand that I'm the youngest intern here, but what can I do? How can I better myself? What can I learn from you? And so my last day of the internship, Andrew pulled me in and said, hey, look, this is my advice. You as a producer need to find your niche. What do you want to produce? And I didn't think of that. I was like, oh. And then it clicked in my head. I'm like, oh shit, it's Broadway. Yes, I love film and TV. Yes, I've been doing coverages under the sun, because when you're a producer intern, they make you do so many coverages. Yes, I parked my dad's old beat up car in Clint Eastwood spot. Yes, I saw Ellen on the lot. Yes, I went to a reading at the Beverly Hills Hotel with Jessica Chastain. And yes, I did all that. But it's like, what has been the driving factor or the flame under my ass has been Broadway. And so it clicked, ding. And so, you know, I was like, okay, well, how am I going to do this Broadway thing? I don't know anyone. I don't know any producers. What am I going to do? And so coincidentally, I was just walking in LA and I got a phone call. And I guess one of my friends who I went to college with at the New York Film Academy, she was going up the ranks and becoming a producer. So she ended up producing Once on This Island. She won a Tony for that. She did the huge event for the Parkland shooting. Huge event. And so she was going up the ranks in New York City while I was starting to make my way in LA. And so funny enough, how it just was luck and timing, where she had a new project called Jagged Little Pill. And she said, hey, Chase, I've been following your story. Would you be interested in working with me and being a producer on Jagged Little Pill? And I was like, yeah. And so that's kind of how it started. It was just luck, timing. I had experience. I was a sophomore in school. So I was 20 years old when I got my first offer to be a Broadway producer. And so that's just kind of how it started. And then the rest is history. And that's just, yeah, that's it. That's the story.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing story. It's just the start of your story. You're going to write some huge book, you know, a few years from now. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I got a lot of good stories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
One of the things I really appreciate that you mentioned just now is the fact that you were real and authentic. You were just yourself.
Yes.
And then the other thing that I appreciate that you mentioned was the fact that, you know, really it came from a connection, someone that you knew, you know, and we've talked a lot about that in this course. So I guess you see that play out in your career.
Yep. I know I keep saying that, but it's friends want to work with friends. Friends hire friends, and people hire people they just want to work with, period. And it makes so much more sense now being behind the table. At first, I'm like, oh, it's corrupt. Oh, they only do X, Y, and Z. But it's true. You know, everyone's talented. Everyone's good in Hollywood, in New York. Everyone is. It's just, again, connections. And that's why networking is extremely, extremely, extremely important.
Mm. So tell me about people now who work for you or under you. I guess, do you notice the difference between the ones who are real and the ones who aren't? Is that something as a producer that you're like, you know, right away?
Yep. And I get a lot of messages. saying, hey, look, I got this project, or I need this, or I want this. There's a lot of wants. Everyone always wants something in this industry, whether it's a new show, whether it's an idea, whether it's a part, whether it's da 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 da. And it's in my head, I'm like, how do I figure out who's genuine, who cares about me as a person? I think that's ultimately the first thing. We're all human beings.
Sure.
Not just robots who operate. Who actually cares about me? And my weird rule of thumb is I look for people who wish me happy birthday. And I know it sounds so lame, but that's how I tell, okay, this person actually took the time, 10 seconds to wish me happy birthday. That is somebody who I know cares and I want to work with. And that's been rule of thumb, because you have to, as a producer, weed out projects you want to work on and projects you don't, and who you want to work with and who you don't. And again, it's when you get one hit, like I was so lucky with Jagged Little Pill before the pandemic, where we were at 98% capacity, making 1.2 million a week with Alanis Morissette. I got a party with Alanis Morissette. Who gets to, party with Alanis Morissette?
Yeah.
And so we were all just taking shots and stuff. But again, it's just who genuinely I connect with. And so, yeah, that's the answer to that question.
Well, for those of us who are not familiar in this Zoom room here, tell us a little bit about Jagged Little Pill. Tell us about what it is.
So you guys might know Diablo Cody, because she is a film writer. She wrote Juno, Land of Tully. And so basically what happened was 8 years ago, our executive producers, Eva Price, who produced a little show called Dear Evan Hansen, she came up with this idea to say, hey, we love the Jagged Little Pill album. How do we bring it to the stage? How do we bring it to Broadway? And so they first reached out to Alanis, and Alanis said, I do not want it to be a biopic. It's not going to be about my life. I have nothing interesting to talk about. What can we do? And so then that's when they pitched it to Diablo Cody, and she said, oh, hey, I'm going to write a whole new story based off of this album. And so that's kind of how it worked. And then they found the creative team off of that. But the biggest misconception about our show is that, oh, it's about Alanis Morissette's life. It is not. It's her album. It's inspired by the album, but it is not about her life. And so a little synopsis of the story, it's about a suburban family who adopted a Black child, and they're pretending their family is so perfect. They have a son who's going to Harvard, but really deep down, he doesn't want to go. And it's just what we're going through basically now, where identity, one of the lead stars, her name's Lauren Patton, she's lesbian, and there's a whole LGBTQ story going on as well. And there's also, we talk about the Me Too movement, and there's a huge scene about the Me Too movement in there. We talk about opioids crisis that's going on right now. So it's about a suburban family who pretends they're perfect, but deep down, everyone's perfectly imperfect. And the storyline is genius. And I'm not being biased. Diablo Cody knows how to write a good book. That's so intricate. It's so hard to even explain the synopsis, because you're just like, damn, like you watch it and you're just like, wow. And it's smart. It's very smart how it's written. And when you're in the audience, you're like, your mind's thinking, you're like, oh, okay. Oh, I see that. Okay. That connects with that. And X, Y, and Z versus like a flatline show where, has the basic arc and then the conclusion, which a lot of Broadway shows do. And they're kind of bashed for having a mediocre book. So that's why I'm happy that we're starting to now bring in TV and film writers. And so
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now you also had you had a Christmas Carol as well. Can you tell us about that project?
Yeah. So while all this craziness was going on, I still had the performer bug in me and decided to audition for Disney. So while all this was going on, I was a performer in Fantasmic at Disneyland. So it was like, that's like the fireworks show with Mickey and the fire and all that. So all this craziness was going on while in school, while producing Jagged Little Pill for the first time, while owning an investment company. I said, hey, you know what? Let's take on one more show, right? Your plate's not full. Let's do it. And so they called me up and they said, hey, look, Chase, we're trying to bring a Christmas Carol back to New York City as a holiday tradition. Would you like to be involved? And I'm like, duh, because it has done so well historically. It's just a well-known show. But what's different about ours, it's written by Jack Thorne. So he adapted Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And so what we ended up doing, it's a condensed version, but it's modern, but not too modern where it takes away from the true story of the Christmas Carol. But what we do, or we're the first ever Christmas Carol to have a differently abled boy play Tiny Tim. So unfortunately, it sucks that we're the first one, because Tiny Tim is written for a boy who has disabilities. And so we are the first Christmas Carol to represent that. So that was my biggest pet peeve. And I think that's like my producing motto is inclusion for all, LGBTQ, all the races, differently abled, and just making sure that everyone is represented on stage. And that's been my goal and projects that I look for. Like Jagged Little Pill represents everyone under the sun. Christmas Carol represents everyone under the sun. And even the project that I'm working on, we're going to launch in July. It's about low-risk kids in communities. We need to help everyone out. And so that's why, as a young producer who's encouraging more young producers, is to make representation available for all in entertainment.
Gotcha. Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. So let's talk about the business side. So, in entertainment business, we have, of course, in our program, we talk a lot about film and music and television and all of these aspects of what we do out here in Hollywood. But, there's a lot of crossover, of course, in what you do on Broadway as a producer. But can you just tell us, hey, day in the life of Chase? What do you do as a producer?
Hey, there's no normal day. So I had to do a talk back in my high school, and they're like, okay, so we really want a 9-to-5 job in entertainment. Does that happen to you? And I'm like, no. Each project you attach yourself to has a completely different schedule. And it sucks because I was able to do, well, it doesn't suck because I was able to do all of this on the West Coast while going to school. So with technology, you don't necessarily have to be in New York City or in LA to work on shows. So that's, thumbs up for that. But I remember the first stages, before Jagged Little Pill opened, I was working on it 2 years before. And every day was either phone call with investors, phone call with the creatives, phone call with the other producers, and just the biggest job was fundraising, was getting the capital to make the show. And I think you forget as a producer how important that is to find capital. That's one of the biggest jobs a producer does, is gets the money for the show to go. And a lot of it is sales. So I was in sales for a little bit, just reaching out to investors, reaching out to people who are interested on the phone. They're like, okay, we're changing casting. Like a Christmas Carol, they were going to have David Harbour. And then they're like, no, we're going to have so-and-so instead. And then the next day they're like, well, we're changing this. You got to tell everyone this. And then you're getting new pitch decks that are being sent out. I have 2 attorneys, one in New York and one in LA, who work with me. So everything I do, make sure all the legalities are right. And that's why I'm a big pusher for entertainment business. I met with Randy Zuckerberg, COO in New York City, Jim Augustine, and he said, you need to know entertainment law. That's what I recommend. Entertainment law, you need to know contracts. So a lot of it was contracts, pitching, contracts, change. Okay, this is our deadline now. Nope, it's moving. Okay, phone calls as early as 3 a.m. to as late as 12 o'clock at night. So there's no structure, unfortunately, being a Broadway producer. It changes, but also you can kind of make your own schedule as well. So it's being self-employed, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as you reflect back on the Los Angeles Film School, entertainment business program, I'll put you on the spot here, but what are some of the classes that you took that you now say, oh, I'm glad I had that. It gave me the right terminology or understanding. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Entertainment law. It's going to save you so much money. Attorneys are so expensive, super expensive. And obviously I wanted both projects, I wanted to protect my ass. And that's what I say. You got to protect your ass. But I think having the knowledge of entertainment business and the legalities and just the legalese of the structure of contracts, because you're going to see a lot of contracts are structured the same. It's just now I know how to read them faster. And that was the biggest thing. And I know what to look for. I know the clauses. Is this something to negotiate? Is it not? X, Y, and Z. So that helped tremendously, and it saved me a lot of money at the end of the day. And so then now when I read contracts, I'm like, okay, circle this question. Let me just have a short conversation, because attorneys charge you, $100 a minute. So I wanted to, make a short amount of time talking to my attorney, just bringing up the bullet points. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. And so that will save you time, energy, and money. And so entertainment business was the biggest. And then also marketing, which, I'm going to say this, was my lowest grade. Marketing class was my lowest grade. I'm like, oh, which, taught me, hey, but being a producer, you're always marketing. You're always marketing your shows. I usually am wearing the Jagged Little Pill hat, but I keep wearing it. So we switched it up, but producers are always marketing. And so that was the second class that I'm like, okay, boy, you gotta, freshen up your skills. And then obviously with what's going on, I read some books and took more courses on marketing.
Yeah.
Freshen those out. But I'd say those two are the biggest. And then obviously intro to business as well. I learned so much with that class. Just the basic fundamentals that you need to know. And it's weird is you're going to see there's a lot of people out there who don't even have degrees. And so I totally endorse education, getting a degree. It's worth it. It's only 4 years. It's not that long. And, but you will see there's some people out there who do not have a degree. And it's fine, but you can also tell the people who do versus the people who don't. And so it just makes yourself more shiny. You're applying for new projects, for new jobs, X, Y, and Z. It helps. And especially now with how it's so competitive and with this pandemic going on where Hollywood's scrambling to try to figure out what they're going to do. Broadway, we just announced today that it's going to be pushed back even further, which is scary. And so we don't know, but I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. That was one of the questions on my list. So it just came out today, that Broadway's pushed back to early September.
Yes.
How's that make you feel?
Scared because, I was supposed to go to the Tonys. This is my first year. I got to go to the Tonys. Yeah, I got to take pictures. I got to do X, Y, and Z. The show was it was expected to get a Tony. So that's why I was so excited. I'm like, oh yes, I could be a Tony winner, or even a nomination. And then it kind of came crashing down. Unfortunately. And so for Jagged Little Pill, we put in $500K. And then for A Christmas Carol, we put in $250K. So that's a lot of money for a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
And just to see all of that go bye-bye for right now is like, it's scary. And we don't know. They're trying to work with the government over there to reopen. But right now we need to learn the habits of our consumers, of our audience members. Do they want to even go to the theater anymore? Are they going to feel comfortable going to the theater? Are unions going to let the talent perform and put them at risk? And so I know that's the same thing in Hollywood as well, as just unions and liabilities and who's going to be liable. Producers don't want to get sued. And so it's a big up in the air right now. And I wish I had a solid answer, but when that news came out, I go, are you for real? I'm like, bro, really? And so it was too good to be true. It was. And so, but you have to be optimistic, but also be real. And it might come back, it might not. And we're going to see a lot of shows, unfortunately, close because it's super expensive to operate in the rent in New York City. It's ridiculous. And that's something that, down the line, I want to change and work with and figure that out. It's just the reason why a lot of shows close is the operating costs and the rent. Rent's the biggest one. And so, yeah, we're talking. And so with what's going on, instead of sulking, because I sulked, it's okay to sulk. I sulked for 2 weeks and I said, boy, get your ass up. You're not sulking. You got to use your platform and do something. You got to pivot. Because I keep reminding myself of that scene in Friends where he's like, pivot, pivot, pivot. You got to pivot. And again, with the Bob Iger book, which I finished, he said, innovate or die. And so I'm like, okay, we're not sulking anymore. We got to figure out what are we going to do now with what we have currently. And so then I launched a online Broadway masterclass series for schools, public schools, private schools, and studios. So I'm able to pay performers, stars, my friends, to come and teach because they're out of money. And I'm also able to use this time to educate and inspire younger kids as well. So I was like, oh, they need money. These kids need something to do. They love Broadway. So how do we combine the two? So I launched in April a Broadway masterclass series for private schools, public schools, and the studio. And then while that was happening, my friend Haley Kilgore, who is Tony nominated for Once on This Island, she reached out to myself and my producing partner, and she said, hey, look, I have this idea. I need to give back to these schools, the arts community. What can we do? And so we decided we're going to launch in July a virtual concert with a whole bunch of celebrities, raising money for the Educational Arts Association that covers, it's like the Thespian Society, covers all art programs that are suffering right now. And so that's what we're working on. And it's exciting to just give back. And that's what I've found and what has kept me motivated, just seeing the faces of these kids and how inspired they are to talk to their favorite celebrity or kids who are at risk, who this is their first time, and how they light up. We had Saquon last night, and she was the first Black Elphaba in Wicked. And so I saw one of my Black students, her face just lit up and was like, oh, I too can be in Wicked. I too can do this. It is not just, you know, a white person's game. It is inclusion for all. And I think that just made me smile. And I was like, okay, damn, this is why I do what I do. And you got to find your why. And I remember that was in my class, and it's true. It's find your why. Why are you doing what you do? And money's nice, but trust me, before the pandemic, I was banking. I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna make X amount of dollars. I'm gonna be this, and then da 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 da. But it was a good sobering wake up. Like, hey, it's not about the money. It's about what you are doing, how you inspire, how you create, how you help people out. And that's been my biggest thing, is just helping people out, and those who are less fortunate, and what I can do with my platform and the people that I know.
Well, that's great. Well, it's really good. It's really good advice. It actually ties in, several of the things you've said tonight tie into several of the things we've been talking about in class over the last day or so. So I appreciate you bringing all of that to us. Now, I want another question just regarding the Broadway shows. Have you guys had any discussions about streaming the show? Have you even gone there?
Yeah, we don't like that. So you've probably seen Hamilton announce that they're streaming.
Right.
Obviously, they're under strict contracts, but I do see that as a negative. Tickets before were $800 for Hamilton. Now, when you can get a subscription on Disney Plus for less than, $10, I don't know how much it is.
Yeah.
Why would people go spend $800 for one ticket in a pandemic hot zone versus just sitting in their own home watching a Broadway show? And so that's what's scary. And I'm pivoting, and right now, as well as another job, I'm looking at my pivots, like YouTube. What can I do to still stay in this business, Broadway? And so streaming, there's a thing called Broadway HD where they do stream some shows. Again, it's a lot about rights. As producers, we buy the rights to the show. And so you have to get a whole bunch of us to agree if we want to stream or not. I think streaming is going to hurt Broadway, unfortunately, but it might help. And so again, it's a question that I don't know, but I'm looking more into, is how can we make it work? Because there's something about sitting in a theater and experiencing it live. And that's the only thing where I'm like, about the streaming is, with the it's completely different. And you'll even see, if some of you have already seen Hamilton live and then you're gonna watch it online, you're like, oh, it's not the same. And it's true. But again, we're going in a time where people can't afford $800 tickets. And so it's like, okay, well, we got to pivot or innovate or die. What are we going to do? And so I probably do see a lot of shows in a stream. And so, yeah. And again, Broadway has to innovate or will die. Unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's a really interesting conversation. It's interesting to hear your take on it, because it's, it to a certain extent, it's about protecting the art form, right? I mean, it's
so
fine line.
Yeah, it really is. And that's the conversation that I've had with other producers, with my producing partner. We're like, do we think Broadway is going to survive this? And some people are like, yes, Broadway always does, da la 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 la. And then some of us are like, oh. Like, I was on a walk today with one of my friends, and she was just like, I don't know when I want to go to New York next. And we really don't. And so it's, we don't know. And so a lot of people are just fighting back and forth. But I think right now we're just trying to figure out legalities of how we can safely open, and if we can, and when, and what we're going to do, like Disney as well. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to do and how it's going to be a new norm for a while. And so, there's pros to it. Obviously, with rows taken out, you don't have someone sitting in front of you, so you have more space. The con is we're not making that much money. And so again, with the rent being so high and the operating costs, you're going to see a lot of shows close, because you need, for shows to be successful on Broadway, you need at least weekly 98% capacity to make a profit and a return, and to keep it going. And so, knock on wood, we thank God, Alanis Morissette is very commercial, and Jagged Little Pill is a commercialized show. which she's like, hey, don't worry, we're going to come back, yada, 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 which is good. Christmas Carol is also a commercialized show. And so we're going to announce our tour. So we're coming to LA in 21. So hopefully we're able to do that at the Amazon still, which I think maybe in 2 years. And just see, yeah, basically what we can do with all of that.
Awesome. Well, it's really interesting to hear your take on it, and we appreciate you sharing that with us. Words of wisdom. Okay, you've got students in here tonight from several different programs, but this is our introduction to entertainment business course. So many of our students are just starting the program. They have different takes in terms of artist management, some producing, they're all over the board in terms of what their career goals are. But I'm just asking you, words of wisdom. You've already given us some words of wisdom, but anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think I'm going to do a call of action. We need more female producers. We need more producers of color. We need more producers who want inclusion for all. There is a major calling for young producers, and unfortunately it's on our backs, because right now there's a lot of older producers who are like, hey, we just don't have enough energy anymore. We don't have the funds. We just don't have the energy. Or they're like, I'm fine with my career. Kind of like how Bob Iger was like, you know what? I did my legacy, then bye. But then came back. But, there's a lot of people like that who are like, I don't want to be tarnished by this pandemic. My legacy is going to stay, yada, yada, yada. Cool. But now it's going to be on the backs of Generation Z, my generation. And so I'd say we need you. It is a call of action. We need more of us, because for entertainment to stay alive, for theater to stay alive, it's going to take our energy that we have that the older generations really don't. And that's why one of the funniest things when I interview or just meet with older producers, they go, how do you have so much energy? Why are you not jaded? And I'm like, hey, I'm not jaded yet, Because you're going to meet a lot of jaded people in the industry, and they're like, how come you aren't jaded? And it's just because we're young, we're excited, we're hungry. And yeah, basically it's a call to action. And that's what I want to do, is bring more entertainment business knowledge to young people. Because there's a lot of people who just know about being a performer or being an artist management, yada, yada, yada. Producers, I think, I had no clue what a co-producer or associate producer did on Broadway. I had no clue what an executive producer did on Broadway. I didn't even really know, until my internship, what a film and television producer did. It was just so foreign to me, and it's so foreign to a lot of people. What are producers? What do they do? And a lot of them, there's misconceptions with producers that they're just greedy, that they just want the money, or they're just old and white. And that's not the case. And so, again, it is a call to action. It's on our backs, to help to keep it alive and with what's going on, and to also inspire younger generations as well, to get them motivated and to get their help and support as well. Because it's going to take a team. And right now, I've experienced before pandemic, it's a lot of I, me. But what we've realized, and I love my generation for this, it's like, hey, no, let's all work together and figure this ish out and get this industry pumping again, which it is going to take us and our energy, because, when this finally does roll over, and it's going to be a couple of years, we're going to be of that age where it's like, okay, it's our decisions, it's our choices. We are the leaders now. What are we going to do? And so right now is a great time, if you're interested, being a producer, to start and just figure it out. And that's even just producing a little concert to give back to the community. It doesn't have to be Broadway. It doesn't have to be movies. I've always thought that Broadway was the end all be all. And I'm like, okay, well, shit, you're 23 now. So you hit that goal. What are you going to do now? No, it's not. It's a thing. It's a great accomplishment. It's a goal, but that's not my overall goal. And it's not like, oh, my goal is just to do movies. You will, you might not, but it should just be more. And again, I go back to the why. It's find out your why, because you're going to be unsatisfied if it's money. I lost a lot of money right now. It's not money. I represent shows that are representing people who don't have a voice. And so again, I know it sounds repetitive, but find your why. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I get up every day and deal with people screaming at me, investors yelling at me? Because it's rarely glitz and glamour. A lot of it is, where's my money? it went down the drain. Why aren't you doing this? What's going on? There's a lot. But when you can just sit back and realize, wow, okay, this is what I do, it makes it a lot better. And especially now when it's hard, because what sucks is I just graduated in January. And so I graduated into a market that's right now, there's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, shoot, do I sulk? I did sulk for 2 weeks. And then I'm like, okay, we got to do something because this is going to be around for a while. And so what do? And again, it's pivot. I know I keep saying pivot, but I got that from friends and also Bob Iger, who said you need to innovate or die, but also manage the risks. So now I'm managing all my risks with projects and stuff coming in and just, trying to stay around for as long as I can.
Well, it's very inspiring, and I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. It's exactly what everyone needs to hear right now. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And also too, in high school, I had a 1.8 GPA. I hated school. I did school. The conservatory directors, which at OSHA, it's you audition for a major. So I was musical theater. The head guy of that conservatory pulled me aside and said, hey, you got it. What are you doing? And I was just like, I don't like school. And so it took me a while. I had to kick my own self in the ass, if that makes sense. And I had to fall on my face multiple times. Because especially too, when you're 18, you're like, oh, I can do it. I don't need my parents. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And New York City or even LA sobers you up so fast where you're like, oh, there's this many people who want to do this. They're all talented. It's not as easy as I thought. And that's the only thing that school doesn't teach. And I recommend is getting in the trenches. I've learned so much just going for it that you will never learn in the books. And so I think that's another word of wisdom is just go for it. Like, what do you have to lose? And again, I reached out to Randy Zuckerberg. I said, hey girl, I'm Chase. I'm a young producer. I understand that you're a producer as well. Can we just meet? I'm like, okay. And everyone's like, she's not going to reply. That's Randy Zuckerberg. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And then so a week later, bling, on LinkedIn, and her assistant responds saying, hey, Chase, Randy would love to talk to you. Here's her email. Please reach out to her. Another assistant, yada, yada, yada. And then from then on, I was able to build a relationship with her and her team by just doing it. Just do it. You have nothing to be afraid of. What, she's going to say no or not reply? And so that's another big thing, to just do it. And I was so fortunate enough, the morning of my Broadway debut with Jagged Little Pill, I was able to go to Columbia University and just sit down with their COO. And he gave me the advice of God, gold. And basically, I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't reach out and if I listened. Also, there's going to be a lot of negative, and people are like, you can't do that. And just don't listen to them and just go for it. What do you have to lose?
Yeah. Great advice. Something everyone needs to hear in this room tonight. So we appreciate that. What I'd like to do is I'd like to open up the floor to our students to ask some questions. So the way we'll do this, guys, is if you can use your raise hand option on Zoom here, then that will enable us to be able to keep you muted until it's time for you to talk, so we don't hear dogs and, like things in the background. So if you want to use the raise hand feature, then I'll call on you, and then we will have you, ask some questions. So who wants to jump in? All right, Drew, go right ahead.
All right. Chase, I have actually two questions. When you were becoming a producer or as a producer, what was the hardest lesson you learned through doing what you do?
The hardest lesson is that it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. I wish it was just a snap of a finger. The hardest thing is working with investors. More specifically, it's a lot, and especially when I was 20 years old. So here's a 20-year-old asking these adults for $500K. That was a huge responsibility that I was just like, ooh, can I do this? What's going to happen? What if they lose their money? Now it's my fault. Yeah. So a lot of it was doubt. And of course it's calculated risk. Obviously I want to make sure that the projects I'm attached to can make money. On paper, they look good. And so again, the hardest the lessons that I've learned more specifically is working with investors, is how to make them happy while they're losing a good chunk of money for a couple of years. And so it's just, again, reminding. So I constantly would remind my investors, hey, yes, you can make a good return. Yes, hopefully you're going to get your money back. But what is your why? Why are you giving money? And a lot of them did it because they loved the entertainment. A lot of their kids were little performers. They would just perform at their school plays. Yeah, they just loved Broadway. And so basically the reason why they gave money was not necessarily, obviously they want to return, but to give back and to help an industry that has helped their kids or one day will employ their kids. And so it was just a constant reminder of just keeping them involved and excited as I was. And so that was a lesson that I've learned overall for investors, is just keeping them excited.
Well, and a piggyback question I have on that is, you know, with Broadway and certainly in film, it's such high risk investing, right? So how do you approach that with your investors? I mean, you said obviously asking them the why, and that's a definitely strong point, but how do you overcome this risk factor with them and having those conversations?
So what I've learned is perks. Investors love their perks. They love, what can I get out of this? What can I get now? And so an investor perk was opening night tickets, opening night party, merchandise, meeting Alanis Morissette, meeting the cast, meeting the crew. And so what got them on board as well as the why was the perks. And obviously being in Orange County, I tapped into a market that did not know anything about entertainment investing, but had the funds. And so also too, it's a cocktail conversation that my investors like to, I wouldn't say brag, but it kind of is bragging, where they like to flaunt it, saying, oh, you know, also I'm a part of this show and we've been nominated for these awards and yada, yada, yada. I got to go to, I was at Sardi's. So my team, we had the whole thing roped off at Sardi's on the second floor, and I got to bring all my investors in. It was just us, and there was like 5 of us, and it was packed. And we had our own little roped off area, and they just loved feeling special. They got to watch. Unfortunately, investors can't walk the red carpet, so they got to watch me. They filmed. It was cool. And then we went in, we saw the show, and then we partied after. It was at the Edison Ballroom in Times Square. It was 2 stories. We had Ben Platt there. We had all these stars, Rosie O'Donnell, all these people there were all partying. The food was awesome. And so basically the perks got to be good as well. You can't just go off of the why. It has to be, okay, what do I get out of it? And same with Christmas Carol, obviously the parties and the merchandise and all that little stuff.
For sure, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Rianne, you have a question.
Yes. So the investors that you approached, were they in the entertainment industry or were they outside?
So a lot of my investors, funny enough, are in real estate. A lot of real estate investors, because they're used to the risk and they like the risk. And so majority of my investors are real estate and then lawyers. You're going to see a lot of investors who are either real estate people, lawyers, or technology. And that's what I found to just be so interesting. Doctors, not really, because they know they're too smart. They're like, oh, we'll add it. Where you're mostly going to get investors who are in real estate, who are lawyers, attorneys, and or I forgot the last one. What did I say? Lawyers, attorneys, and just people who love the arts, or love you too. All these my investors, I've known them personally. So when you get investors, they're personally investing in you, not necessarily the show. That too, but it's literally saying, hey, look, we love you, we believe in you, here you go. And that's what's also scary, is that it's a lot of responsibility. It is. And so and again, you just got to do it. Like I was scared at first. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could take on all this responsibility, but someone has to do it. And that's why, I applaud our leaders, because it is hard.
Yeah.
Always easy. And so, did I answer?
Especially when it's like a personal connection, because like,
yes,
you're afraid to burn that bridge.
Yes.
And if you lose that, like, you're not just losing the business connection. If you burn that bridge, you lose the personal connection too. So I feel like there's more risk to that.
Oh, yeah.
And I approach, so my investors too are also personal connections, that there are so many times when I'm like scared to like approach them like, hey, we kind of need more.
Yeah.
So,
That's the No, that is the worst email when they're like, hey, so if we want to go next season, we're going to need a little bit more money. And then your investor's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
remember why? And they're like, what the hell? You're like, yeah, no, that is the sucky part. And again, it's not all, roses. There's a lot of stuff. And especially now as I'm going back to, it's a lot. And with all Broadway closing and the loss of this money for now, hopefully not forever, it's taking me to find why do I do what I do as well. And they're understanding. You're going to, probably, there's some investors who are completely understanding. We're like, don't worry, everything will come back. And then you have that one investor who's like, what did you do? Where's my money? You said this, right?
Yeah.
And so you have an array of investors with different personalities that you just have to just deal with it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Part of your team. And it's just, investors, investors.
Alexis, you got a question?
Yeah. So I was just wondering, how do you find the balance between listening to, just finding like that balance between the advice that you actually listen to versus you probably shouldn't be listening to? How did you find that balance, like, in that?
It's just going in the trenches, man. It's literally just putting yourself out there and figuring out what advice works and what works for you and what doesn't. And it's hard because even when I was training to be a performer, you get so much direction and opinion. Same with, entertainment business, or even, what I've been doing now. My whole family doubted me. They go, what is this jagged little pill thing you're doing? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And they're like, no, you're crazy. Stop. I don't even know what this is. Stop. Don't do it. And again, it's the advice that I gave myself is just don't listen to anyone else. This is your life. You're in charge of you, nobody else. Do what makes you happy. Go for it. Even Bob Iger said, go for it. He said, go for it. Just go for it. And so again, I just learned that advice on my own because I guess I listen, but again, in school, I'm the type of student who's like, okay, well, I don't really agree with what they said, or I don't know. That doesn't really work for me. In my head, I'm like, okay, well, how can I translate that to where I listen? And so it was go for it and just, again, going in the trenches, and you're going to figure it out on your own because everyone's going to tell you. I'm the type of person that people will tell me, and I'm stubborn. I'm a Taurus. So everyone's like, no, you can't do it, or you shouldn't do this. And I'm like, no, until I fall flat on my ass, then I will make a change. So people are going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it's valuable. You're going to listen to it, but really the advice that you're going to give to yourself is what you've experienced on your own. And that is so valuable because you listen to yourself. I listen to myself, my head, more than I do other people, which I probably, make it more 50-50. But again, it's like, well, how do you know? You don't know, or you've had that different experience. What are you to tell me this? And so, yeah, you're gonna figure it out, and you'll give yourself advice, which is awesome. But then also have mentors. So I also recommend getting 2 mentors. One that's a far reach, where like mine's Bob Iger, where I just read his books. I took his masterclass online, and then finding one that is hands-on, like Andrew Lazar. And so again, they give you good advice, and I trust them. Or Andrew, but then also what Bob Iger preaches, I trust his advice as well. So finding 2 mentors to bounce ideas off of, or one, and then the other one to learn from, is awesome. And I recommend that. Just go out, and especially now, because everyone's sitting at home. Yes, we're working, yes, we're doing school, but a lot of people have more free time. And so what I've told my younger students is reach out to someone far that you've always wanted to. They're here. They're not doing anything. Reach out to them, say, hey, look, I want you to mentor me, or I have a question. I would love to just chat with you. And so I did that again, and I'm meeting with the head of YouTube TV on Monday because I was just like, hey, that's where I want to kind of pivot, is going to more YouTube streaming. How do we start? And so I hit up my connection and got in touch and just, reached out and reach out. Just now's the perfect time. Everyone's just sitting on their phones, their laptops waiting.
Yeah.
So, to mentors, to anyone you just want to talk to, stars, celebrities. And they even said that too, all of them coming in and teaching, they said, reach out to us. We're here for you. And it's a community that gives back. The right people give back. And again, you're going to see a lot of negative people. They're not the right ones. The good people who are in this industry give back. Okay. And you'll find them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Andre, you have a question?
Yeah, hi.
Yay.
Very nice speech. I like that. I want to become director and producer at the same time. And what would be your advice to me, like essential or like major advice that I would might apply to myself?
You can do both. You can do both. See, at first I was scared. I was like, well, if I become a producer, then I can't be a performer. You will realize that a lot of performers are producers as well. Reese Witherspoon is a huge example. You might think, oh, she just performs. No, she's a producer. Oprah is a performer, producer. There's directors who direct and also produce as well. And so my advice is you can do both. And especially now with today's day and age, you can do both, and a lot of people do it. And I think you kind of have to. If you want to make money or just stay in the business, you can't just be one thing. And that's, again, what I teach my students who are performers. It's a triple threat. You got to be a triple threat. You got acting and dance, and now even play an instrument, because it is just so competitive that I'd say you can do it. And that's why I want to also, perform still. I'm not done with that. Obviously, right now I'm working on the producing side, but I would love to still perform and do both. And you can do both. Nobody's telling you no. And as a producer, guess what? You're in charge. You make the shots. There's no one else above you, which is so awesome and rewarding, but it's also a huge responsibility, is that you are that leader. And you just got to get a team that believes in you, who loves you, who wants to work with you, and that's it. And the rest is, history.
Thank you. And the quick question also, is there any way to keep in touch with you somehow, like through email or something?
Yeah. No, I'll give you guys my email and my social medias and LinkedIn's and whatnot. Because right now, my producing partner and I look for new young producers. We're not the old way where it's like me, myself, and I. No, our goal is to bring more inclusion and to bring more producers to Broadway. Obviously, that's my connection. I get you some Broadway, producing stuff. And I'd love to, of course.
Thank you.
Rianne, you have another question?
So are you interested in producing films?
Yes. So we're kind of trickling back to that side. So right now, just like all of us, I'm trying to get another job. And I've been applying. I got a job offer right when I graduated. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and I did risk calculation, and it's too risky right now to take on that job. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to resign. But while that's happening, I'm finding ways like YouTube TV, trying to connect with people who can hopefully get me a job. So just like everyone else, we're looking for jobs. And again, that's cool to see, not cool, but it's relatable. Everyone's like, okay, everyone's in the same boat right now, but also it's just more competitive because it's everyone who's looking for a job. How do we stay in entertainment business? And so that's what's kind of scary. Not even scary, it's just more competitive right now with jobs and what's working now and what's not.
Okay. All right, we have time for probably one or two more questions. Anybody else have a question, your burning question that you have to ask?
Okay.
Rianne? Hey.
Sorry. It's just because we're kind of in the same boat. I'm a performer producer myself.
Yeah.
So what is your advice? And because I'm pretty sure you have friends who are actors and producers as well. I have friends who have actors and producers. What was it like working with your friends versus working with legit professional people?
Yeah. Okay. So working with your friends, I think it's easier to call them out on their BS.
Yes.
You know them? Yeah. No, you can. And you're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Hold on, let's do this again. So the project I'm working on now, we're all friends. And there's pros and cons. The pros is you feel more comfortable, where you can say, hey, look, I disagree with you, I don't. The con is that you don't want to step on anyone's toes, or if there is a problem, then friends start fighting. But because our group they're all professional, we're all professional while we do our meetings, and then off our meetings or off camera, we can do our own crazy stuff. The biggest thing is just staying professional with your friends and having that same structure as if you were working with someone who was professional. Because as you get more involved in the industry, professional people are going to be your friends. They're all going to be your friends after a while. And so it just comes with age, and the more people you connect with and work with, they're going to all become your friends. And so it's just how you got to maintain that professionalism while working and pick the right friends too. You know, because you also have some friends who are like, I don't care, you know, and all crazy. Then you have some friends who are like, listen, you got to do this. And we're going to be professional. Find those friends. You want to work with those professional friends and then have your fun friends on the side. And again, it's cultivating your team. You got to find a good team who knows who's going to work, but also going to have a little fun. You know, the worst is going to a dry meeting or presentation where it's someone going, like that gets boring after a while. Where it's cool and fun with friends, where you can crack a joke, and even regular meetings, and just have a little bit of spunk. We're in entertainment, for Christ's sakes. We're not doctors.
Yeah.
We're literally entertainment. And so there's some people who are like a law class. Well, we're doing this, no, which is good. They know their numbers, but we are artsy people. Like if a bird flies or outside, we're like, oh, bird. You know, we're a group of artists, and literally that happens. We're in a meeting, and then the sound happens. They're all like ADD. We're like, whoop, okay. And it's true, because again, we're a whole bunch of artists who love what we do, and some of us happen to have gone to the business side as well. And it's just fun. If you find a good group of people, friends, it's awesome, and it does make it more enjoyable.
Sure.
As you probably, experienced. Yeah, you know.
Alexis, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how would you use social media to your biggest advantage, or what are the biggest platforms that you could use to your advantage right now, especially?
Okay, so LinkedIn. I'm gonna keep saying it, LinkedIn. It is gold. It is gold. At first, I was like, what is this LinkedIn? LinkedIn is how I got connected with Randy Zuckerberg. LinkedIn was how I got connected with a lot of people in the industry. That is a website that you should have a profile on, especially now. Obviously, I was just casting the other day with our team for the concert series, and then we looked at talent's numbers, social media numbers. So obviously, talent needs to have good numbers. If you just want to be producer or just business side, I recommend LinkedIn. Instagram's good, Facebook's okay, you know, they're okay, but LinkedIn, you're able to represent yourself professionally, and a lot of professionals are out there, even scouting. I got scouted by a Hollywood executive through LinkedIn. And so, yeah, LinkedIn. 100%.
Yeah, I've heard from like people like Gary Vee and stuff. He's like in the entertainment side, but he's like more on the business. And he said TikTok and LinkedIn are the biggest platforms that you, especially now, should be taking advantage of if you want to get your art out there, or if you want to get recognized or any of that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
No, 100%. And I didn't realize that I have become a LinkedIn king. My partner, she's laughing at me. She's like, Chase, how do you do all this? I'm like, I don't know. I just learned on YouTube, which is good. Use YouTube to learn. But yeah, no, it's just going on LinkedIn, and yeah, it's gold. It's a genius platform.
Awesome.
All right, we have one more question from Brian.
Yeah, I just want to see, I don't know if you explained your why. I just want to know what was your why, and what is, like, when you talk to your investors and everything, what is, like, not to give the exact percentages, but what kind of percentages do they take out of their split when you're after you're pitching your shows and everything?
Yeah, no, those are great questions. First, like, the why is, and it's funny enough, it is on my resume, and it says producer objective, and then it's inclusion for all, for the LGBTQ community, for the differently abled, for people of all backgrounds, just inclusion, basically, from the voices that are not represented enough. And for women, just all of that. And so that's my why. My why is, how can I give a voice to people that don't? And so it works, and I love it. And it's not like, oh, I'm just getting ahead of the curve. No, there's no curve that I'm getting ahead of. This is what I've seen working at Radio City. I was the only white guy working with minorities, and that changed my life. Just talking. I grew up in Orange County, California, Laguna Beach. I'm spoiled. So then going all the way to New York City and working at Radio City, minimum wage, as now I'm the minority, and just talking and learning was the biggest, like, whoa. These people need a voice. They need to get their voices need to be heard. And I just sat there and listened to their stories about how they're struggling, about how just X, Y, and Z. And so that's really where I shaped my why, is getting down in the trenches and talking to the people that I want to represent and hopefully get them up with me who can, you know, speak for themselves. And so that, again, where my why came from, is just getting my hands dirty and just really figuring it out head on. And then for percentages, so each show is different. And so basically what it does is, or what happens is there's capitalization, and then there's a how much you put in. So usually co-producers are about, like, Jagged was like 600K. That's how much you need to bring in, as well as for you creatively and whatnot. So what they do is they calculate that total off the capitalization, and then they give you that percentage. Obviously you get an ROI, so you get a return of your investment, and then the attorneys and then the people on the contract side of the show then negotiate. There's like a 1 for 1, a 1 for 2, 1 for 3, and those are just different percentages based off of what the executive producers want to give you, and on top of how much you brought into the show as well. So each show is different. And so again, it's just based off of capitalization, how much you bring in, how much the producer wants to give you for what you did. Were you a front money agreement producer? Were you helped bring in the funds before the project was established? Were you an after? And so there's just a lot that comes into play. And then obviously I reached out to my Broadway attorney. He calculates the percentages. He says, well, you're gonna make X, Y, and Z because you did da, 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 da. And so each show is different. Each show has a different capitalization. There's no exact number, like, oh, every producer gets this. Some producers I know in the UK, they can charge a fee. In America, you can't. So it's different. It's, yeah, and film and television is a lot different than Broadway, and Broadway in the US is a lot different than Broadway in the UK. Producers, some can take a chunk of change up front. Usually producers don't. We're the last to make our money, which is a big risk as well. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question. It's a lot of calculations and a whole bunch of stuff that's different for each project.
Awesome. Well, listen, Chase, you have been extremely inspiring tonight. It's exactly, exactly what we needed tonight. Just an uplift, and just a success story from LA Film School in our program that we're in here. And I just can't thank you enough for your generosity tonight and giving us your time and your knowledge. And we look forward to having you back sometime, soon. Yeah. And maybe we can, get you on campus one of these days when we get back to the real world. So I want to thank, I want to thank Cecilia Berry and Whitney Braid and Mac Torlucio. I want to thank you guys as well for setting all of this up for us as well. So we appreciate all of you at the LA Film School, and we are finished. So have a good night, and thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
All right, you guys.